Hello and welcome to another Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig, joined as always by Andrew. I am wearing a Columbus Crew jersey today, and you are in Columbus.
Not wearing a Crew jersey.
I know it's kind of reverse here. The Clevelander or Northeast Ohioan representing Columbus on the pod.
That's right. But I am going to the game on Friday, the match on Friday.
Going down to the pitch.
Yep, going down to the pitch. Yep.
And I should have said I'm wearing the top half of a kit or something.
That's right.
Funny enough, I didn't even tell you. I came to your fair city yesterday. I was there for 3 hours and I drove all the way home.
Nice.
No time to visit with my friends in the Columbus area.
Yeah. Were you downtown or?
Dublin for some fancy, nice restaurant for an insurance meeting. And then I came all the way back. It's just a long day of driving. People think Ohio's small. When I found this out when I went to college in Boston, especially with the New Yorkers, first of all, they didn't know what time zone we were in, let alone the fact that we're in the same time zone as they are. And
Yep.
I had a friend once a few years after school who gave me a call on my cell phone and was like, "Hey, I'm in Ohio. I'm on a layover. You want to hang out?" And I'm like, "Maybe. Where are you?" He's like, "I'm in Cincinnati." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Dude, that's like 6 hours away."
Yeah,
from
be
where I
there. Be
am.
there in 6 hours. Yeah.
Ohio's just this little speck on the map. Never mind the fact that it takes 8 hours to drive from one side to the other.
What I want to know is how far west they thought Ohio was, that they thought maybe we weren't in the same time zone. I mean,
and it wasn't the same two people.
Okay. Well, we are on the border, to be fair, of the Eastern time zone. Indiana and Ohio is the time zone split, but
it's also a real good long drive through Indiana. Indiana is a wild card as far as time zones go, anyway.
Well, because they used to not observe daylight savings time.
Right.
And so you would have that thing where some of the time they were at the same time as us, and other times they were an hour behind, which was always kind of weird. But
yeah,
now I'm pretty sure they observe.
Yeah, and we're bearing the lead. There's so much to talk about this week. We've got Coldplay took over the viral internet. You and I are talking mere hours after we found out that Ozzy Osbourne passed away. So we're going to do the lighthearted stuff first, and then we're going to talk about Ozzy, and then we're going to talk about a record that came out about 10 years ago, Painted Shut by Hopalong, one of my favorite records from the last 10 or so years for sure, and probably one of my top records of all time. That's a long list, by the way, so don't think I'm making it like a top 5 or a top 2 but like I would consider this one of my favorite albums. I just have a long list of favorite albums. So
yeah, like
but
you have like 30 top 10 albums.
Probably. Yeah, 30 top 10s, exactly.
That's about how it is for me too. So,
well, it's like you and I have talked about this. When somebody asks who's your favorite band, I'm like, well, favorite death metal band, favorite indie rock band, favorite band from the tens, because I've had lots of favorite bands.
All-time band. I mean,
my current favorite band is Manchester Orchestra. My favorite band of all time is probably Pearl Jam. But there was a minute where Tool was my favorite band by far.
Yeah, we did an entire episode on bands who held our belt.
Oh, yeah.
And currently, Foxing holds the belt for me by far. We've spent a lot of time this year talking about Turnstile, and Turnstile's up there. But, and like a band like Cloud Nothings is always in the running in consideration. Deaf Heaven is always in consideration. But right now, over the last year and a half or so, it's just been Foxing for me.
Your obsession is clear.
Yeah.
And without going down the full rabbit hole, but there was a minute where I was listening to that Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs to the point where I was like, could this band become one of my favorite bands for a minute? No shade. They didn't follow it up enough probably for them to break into that category, but that's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's on the list.
Yeah, it's great.
So anyway, Coldplay. I was early to this one because I get up early in the morning, and by lunchtime, the Coldplay story where they did the kiss cam and they caught a cheating CEO and the head of HR, like just blew up and took over the internet in ways that I almost didn't think was possible anymore. How shocked were you that a viral moment could take hold the way this one took hold?
I don't know if I was that shocked just because of the scandalous nature of this. I think like if it was the CEO and some random person, it would have been less impactful, at least to me. I think like the CEO is getting a ton of heat, but like I think an underrated aspect of this story is that it's the head of HR the entire thing HR is supposed to prevent. Like she's right there, caught right in the middle of it, uh, and I don't know. There's something to me serendipitous. Like I have no sympathy for them. I'm sorry, I don't. You know, any thought of well, they had their because I have seen a lot of people saying like, oh, like their privacy was invaded and they didn't give permission for their images to be plastered on the screen unexpectedly. And it's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, your private tender moment with your side piece was put up on the big screen at a public concert in which, like, when you go to a concert or a sporting event or anything like that, there's always cameras on you. Like, to have this idea in today's day and age that in a public place like a concert, that you are shielded from that is just so ridiculous to me. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, so I don't have sympathy for them, but I'm also capable of, and I'm not saying you're not, but I'm capable. I think that it's important to hold multiple thoughts at any one time because I am left wondering about the world that we've built, that the viral shame cycle, where got to a point where I no longer think the punishment fit the crime, as it were. And I think the level of attention and scorn, and just due to the nature that it was so memeable, and the memes were hysterical. People
yeah,
putting different people in those circles and letting it perpetuate and perpetuate and perpetuate. I do think that there's something to be said for how unfair our current moment is when you become the main character of the internet, that
yeah.
what you did is blown up to a proportion that is completely unfair. But no, like you kind of get what you get. But the viral internet part, I think beyond these two people is worth talking about at all times.
I'm a extraordinarily empathetic person in general. I often say I think it's to a fault that I am somewhat easy to take advantage of because of that, but I can have empathy for what it must feel like to be in their shoes at this moment and have the entire world laughing at you and making fun of you and giving
Yeah,
alternate takes on this. Like, absolutely. I can have empathy for how horrible that must feel right now, but I don't have sympathy for them for this because again, you know, they're not doing anything that millions of people do every year. You know, like we have this, like, obviously, like cheating on your spouse is not a good thing, but like it's not an uncommon thing. Like they are not doing anything that millions of people, we probably all have friends who have cheated on significant others, maybe not spouses, but certainly significant others, and maybe in some cases spouses. But I think it's important to like separate those two distinctions though.
sure.
Like, you know, like it's still like I don't feel bad for them being caught for this because like my sympathy goes for, you know, the CEO's wife and children. I don't know if the head of HR had a family, but my sympathy goes to the people around them, but my empathy can go to the, you know, that feeling of just the weight of what that must feel like becoming such a joke. But in that spirit, to talk about some of the jokes, I think my favorite one. I've had so many favorite ones, but this is like having my favorite album. I have so many favorite memes. I think my
Yeah,
favorite one though is I saw somebody did one with where it was from The Office, Dwight with Pam, and I thought
yeah.
that was a pretty great one.
No, there were lots of good ones, and this is probably a good place to for us to stop talking about this. The most overdone joke was to set up the joke and say, I'm devastated and horrified. I can't believe I found out my spouse likes Coldplay.
Yeah,
And then, the turnabout, and it just turned into a joke about Coldplay. And Coldplay has become one of those bands that everybody loves to hate, but they still somehow just sell out stadiums worldwide, and they're as popular as they've ever been with their millions and millions of monthly listeners and
hmm.
billions of streams and tickets sold. And I know an actual family, a non-cheating family that went to the show and took their
Oh,
daughter and had
really?
a great
Oh, that's
time
funny.
up in Toronto and had the best time. So I've seen Coldplay live back, man, right after X and Y, I think. I had the free corporate tickets to, I believe it was called Gund Arena at the time. And it was a great show. That band knows how to put on a stadium show, and
Sure.
they have some good songs. I have 5, 6, 7 songs I like from Coldplay. I would go. I wouldn't pay $500 to go see them, but
Yeah.
anyway,
They're
it's
they're mostly one album wonder band for me personally. I love Rush of Blood to the Head. I think
Oh,
that's
that's right, because you're wrong about Yellow. That's
dude,
yeah,
Yellow
I
is
forgot about that.
such garbage. I freaking hate that song. And I hated it the moment I heard it. And I that video being played on MTV nonstop is like seared in my mind. And I hated that band. And then, yeah, Rush of Blood was just so good. I had to like swallow my pride so hard and admit, okay, like this band they know what they're doing. Like that album was great. I'll fully get on board with that entire album. I even like Viva La Vida, like which was a little bit of a
Yeah.
polarizing one, but I thought that was actually a pretty solid album. The other ones are X and Y I've listened to, is fine. There are a couple all right songs on Parachutes, but I don't think I've even listened to anything beyond those albums. But
I've been exposed to a lot of their singles over the last 6 months since I started doing spin class, where they're
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm thrown a lot of music that I wouldn't normally listen to, and in those scenarios, it's like, yeah, this actually is pretty good. I wouldn't have picked this to listen to, but
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt my soul.
We've talked a lot about different bands that like it's just cool to hate on.
Yeah.
Nickelback for sure, Creed, back in our day, Candlebox, which is one you and I
Yep.
both we hate that stigma for them. But I'm not sure any singular moment in pop culture has ever done more damage to a band's not legacy, but sort of their impression, their reputation than 40-Year-Old Virgin did to Coldplay. And
Yeah.
that singular line, which was hilarious, it's such a good line, you have to admit, but it has
Yep.
done so much damage to Coldplay. Coldplay has become the standard, like, placeholder for like they're not cool to like, and a lot of it is because of that line in 40-Year-Old Virgin for sure.
Which is really funny too, because it's a band that they pass clear so many hurdles, and they pass so many tests where I think it's all the original members. I think they all still write. I think they
Yeah.
all still participate. They're popular, but they work across genres with other artists. They do all
Hmm.
the things that you're supposed to do to be a great, relevant, generational band. And you're right, that stigma just sticks with them.
Yeah. If you notice, I didn't say the joke because I'm not sure you can use that joke today. Like, I don't know that that would be in a movie today,
That's funny. Yeah, I
you
don't
know.
know.
So, anyways, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up, but I don't feel
Yeah.
like saying the joke because it's probably inappropriate today.
Speaking of inappropriate today, that leads us to the passing of dear Ozzy Osbourne, who was almost never appropriate and gained fame and popularity in a lot of ways. I mean, yes, the music was great, but in a lot of ways, his kind of second or third act, I think it was probably his third act in the 90s on TV, was being inappropriate and being off the wall and creating a pop culture persona that captivated America on MTV with the Osbournes.
That was actually probably his fourth act because that's more 2000s.
Oh, I guess you're right.
I mean, really. So he had Black Sabbath, that's Act One. Then his 80s run, that's Act Two. His 90s comeback tour, with the No More Tears album and Into Osmosis, like that's Act Three. Act Four is the Osbournes, the reality show. And then maybe Act Five, like Elder Statesman, like he's kind of been a mascot of sorts for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so. There aren't very many musical icons that are going to have the legacy that Ozzy had. I always have to be careful with these things, like, because for me, I was not an enormous Sabbath or Ozzy fan in terms of the music. So like this doesn't hit me like Chris Cornell, Mark Lanigan, some of the Lane Staley, the ones, that were a little bit more personal for me. So I don't want to front and act like this is a personal devastating loss, but like, I think it speaks to just the size of his influence and the type of icon that he is, that it's impossible for us to not talk about it and have extraordinary reverence for his career, his life, what he did for heavy music. If you're making a Mount Rushmore of the most important people in the history of heavy music, there's no way Ozzy's not on that Mount Rushmore. And so, just in terms of from beginning to end, the career he's had, all the different types, the different generations he's impacted, just the music, pop culture, movies, like he's touched so many different facets of our lives. And so for that, it is a tremendous loss to all of us.
Yeah, and one of the most impactful parts of his career, and along with his marriage to Sharon Osbourne, who helped guide his career kind of through that second and third act, I think,
Yeah.
was Ozfest, where not only did he
Mhm.
help spawn all this heavy music, then with Ozfest, he kind of became the tastemaker
Yeah,
to
it's a
give a
great point.
platform to all these heavy bands, some of them absolutely great, some not so great, but I remember Ozfest '98. He went. Again, I'm like you. I was not a huge Ozzy fan. I listened to some Black Sabbath and I heard some Ozzy on the radio. I never owned any of it, um, but I liked Ozzy, and we went to Ozfest '98 because we wanted to see Tool, and there we got to see System of a Down and Snot and Limp Bizkit and Cold Chamber, which I
Yeah.
was less excited for, and Megadeth. He helped Megadeth keep their career going to a new generation, even as the output was kind of slowing down, if not non-existent by that point. But just bringing and creating that community across generations of heavy music fans and perpetuating it. And, that's a situation where System of a Down was on the side stage of Ozfest '98. And then all of a sudden, that becomes one of the biggest rock bands in the world,
Yeah.
and certainly one of the biggest heavy rock bands to ever exist.
Hmm.
So yeah, his impact is so beyond being the guy who sang Paranoid and Iron Man and all that stuff, or the guy who ate bats. But
Yeah.
he could have been the footnote. He could have been the guy who ate bats and then just been kind of a cultural footnote from that point on, but kept reinventing himself, kept putting music out, kept finding ways to be relevant, almost in spite of himself. And Sharon Osbourne obviously deserves, she's
I mean, for sure. Like,
controversial, but she deserves a ton of that credit.
I mean, Ozzy went from being this dark figure, certainly. I don't know if I would say he was hated by the public, but misunderstood by the public at best.
And
Um, you know,
mysterious.
certainly like with the whole biting the head off the bat thing, like that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It was definitely a guy that, like, at that time you wouldn't let your kids listen to, like you didn't want your kids to listen to him. And he went from that into like such a lovable character. Like he did turn himself into a bit of a caricature, but like it was to his benefit. Like, he became this lovable, almost grandfatherly figure, to not just music, but to pop culture at large. So many people who didn't listen to Black Sabbath and Ozzy's music got exposed to him through the Osbournes and fell in love with him and like saw him as this like great, loving, caring family man. And getting to see the dynamics of his and Sharon's, relationship was really interesting to see because it was hard to understand from the outside. I think a lot of us had a lot of misinterpretations or misunderstandings of what Ozzy was about and what his and Sharon's relationship was. And so doing that, you certainly give Sharon credit from the business side of it, but like you still needed Ozzy's personality to shine through and his willingness to put himself out there. It can go a couple ways. Metallica tried that with Some Kind of Monster and it destroyed their image to a lot of people. To this day they are roundly mocked for exposing themselves and being that vulnerable. But with Ozzy, I think he just came across so lovable and likable that you just couldn't help but laugh. Like it was so the dichotomy of like this image of what we thought Ozzy might be versus Ozzy the family man was just so stark that you just couldn't help but like watch. You just wanted to see more and learn more. I just think that that's kind of the lasting legacy of what that show did for him in terms of showing everybody, there was more to him than maybe what we originally thought.
I just remember how shocked I was when that TV show launched, and getting to understand this side of Ozzy and who he was and his kids and everything else. And I think of the weird impacts that show had on my life. Not like, philosophy or anything else, just more like superficial stuff. And I'll let you, if you have any, I'll let you go too. But I was thinking about it. I never had tried Chipotle until I saw the episode where Ozzy was just obsessed with burritos from Chipotle. And ordered one after another, after another, after another. And it was a bit on the show
Yeah.
where he was eating another burrito. And so at some point I tried Chipotle because I saw it on the Osbournes. The franchise was rolling out nationwide. Yes, we're old enough that we Chipotle didn't always exist in our world
Yeah.
for our younger listeners. So that's one. And then at some point, Kelly Osbourne started dating Burt McCracken, the
Yep.
lead singer of The Used. And I don't know if I ever would have discovered The Used, but because I found out who
You
Burt
didn't.
was,
That's how you found out about them.
I think so. I
Oh,
think so.
that's funny. I was like, I remember, like, I knew who they were, and I was like, that dude looks exactly like the singer of The Used, and sure enough, it was.
Yeah, and so he and Kelly dated on the show. He was public on the show, and that first record from The Used came out, and just an absolute amazing record.
So good.
And I fell in love with that record, and I ended up seeing them live and everything else. And who knows if it all happens if I get to know that band. You know, once you know the story of a band and you get to know the
Yeah.
characters, the members, you feel a different level of participation in their career. And
Yeah.
so those are the first ones that pop to mind from having watched that show.
Yeah, I do wonder though. Like, there's no doubt it was good for The Used career for Burt being on that show. No doubt about it. Before we talk about his actual passing a little bit and talking about the recent benefit show, his farewell show a couple weeks ago, I do want to touch a little bit on the album Osmosis. Like, we could there.
You gotta place it. You gotta place it in time.
Yes, that, like, there's so many albums that we could talk about. We could talk about Black Sabbath albums and, like, certainly, like, Bark at the Moon, and, like, a lot of that 80s stuff is, Crazy Train clearly is things he's going to be more well known for and the lasting things that people remember. But, since we like to do anniversary albums on this show, it's actually the 30-year anniversary of Osmosis this year. And, Ozzy kind of, like, after Randy Rhoads passed away and, after his initial success with the 80s, he kind of seemed to maybe be fading away. He was losing relevance. He just wasn't. He hadn't, like, connected with anything new with our generation, the people that were just getting into high school in the 90s.
Yeah, he was just a legacy act at that
Yeah.
point.
Yep. And certainly the No More Tears album and Mama I'm Coming Home, which was a huge MTV hit. I remember seeing that video and thinking, like, oh, that's that old guy's song, not really knowing all that much about Ozzy, to be honest. Because, I mean, that album was probably like 92. I was 12 years old. Like, I didn't know what Black Sabbath was or anything like that. But by the time Osmosis comes out, it's now 1995. I'm 15 years old. I'm very deep in music at this point. And he puts out this blistering album that a lot of people hailed at the time as a bit of a return to form. Zakk Wylde, I to this day say I think that's his finest guitar playing, certainly with Ozzy on that album. And I just want to talk, like, this opening just battering ram of 5 songs: Perry Mason, I Just Want You, Ghost Behind My Eyes, Thunder Underground, and See You on the Other Side. 5 just blistering great songs to kick off an album. It's one of the strongest runs of 5 songs to open an album. And every time I listen to this album, I don't listen to it a ton, but if I'm going to listen to Ozzy, this is what I go to, because for me, I put it on and I am just, this is one of those albums we talk about that just immediately transports me to another time. In my head, it's high school. Like, I feel like high school, like, just shortly after this, I would get my driver's license. This was something I was listening to all the time while driving. It was just such a huge hit in my circle of a lot of us discovering Ozzy. And a lot of my friends went back and got into Black Sabbath because of Osmosis. And it's just always stuck with me what this album meant to, my circle of friends, and what, how much it changed the way I saw Ozzy. While I didn't fall in love with Black Sabbath, it certainly exposed me to Black Sabbath. And so I just wanted to throw a little bit of love and appreciation out there for this particular album. I don't think it's one of his highest selling albums, probably not one that most people, like I said, like, most people are going to go to his 80s stuff when they talk about Ozzy's solo career, but I just think Osmosis was just such a monster album for me and my friends at that time. So,
And we've talked a lot about 1995 and just what a murderer's row of record releases there were that year. And
mhm.
this one did debut at number 22 on the Billboard 200.
Okay.
So it's not like it didn't sell at all.
Yeah.
But the other thing, you're talking about those first five songs. Um, it was Ozzy working with Zach Wild. Geezer Butler
Geezer
gets a
Butler came
writing
back and played
he gets
bass
a
on this
writing credit
album.
on Thunder Underground, and then Lemmy helped him write "See You on the Other Side."
Yeah,
And
Lemmy was doing stuff with him at that time. Yeah.
so once again, you're talking about him bridging the gap and bringing people along for the ride. Yes, for his benefit, but also for their benefit. And just who would have ever thought that he'd be connective tissue for heavy music,
Yeah.
bringing generations together?
And
But
we
yeah,
we're
it's
going to
pretty
do,
phenomenal.
you and I are going to do a disservice to how important Black Sabbath is to heavy music just because neither of us were super into them.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to interrupt you because when I was saying my introduction to Black Sabbath was going backwards after hearing Ozzy and being more familiar with his 80s stuff, and then at some point I bought the Black Sabbath greatest hits, the version that you normally used to see at Best Buy.
Yep.
That was my Black Sabbath exposure. And
Sure.
so, and that's not a shot at Black Sabbath. That's just me at my age discovering it on my own, without an older brother or an uncle or a dad who was into that music. That was my introduction.
You think about people our age, like I think we all know that one. We all know the Doors' greatest hits. Like that's how almost
Yes,
all of us experienced the Doors. Aerosmith, big ones. That was a
big
huge
ones.
introductory point to Aerosmith for us. Like we have these like iconic greatest hits albums that like we all had, and that's sort of like how we discovered these bands. It's just kind of
Well,
a
and I've always said to you, the only Beatles album that I've had was the White Album, and other than that, I had the Greatest Hits Blue
yeah.
double disc and the Greatest Hits Red double disc,
Did you ever get
and that was how I.
the one of their
What's
number
that?
one hits? They
No, I didn't get
it
that
just had
one.
the number one on the cover.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember it.
yeah, that one was huge.
But that's a lot of how our generation was introduced to music because we couldn't just log on to YouTube and stream it or on Spotify and stream it. We couldn't It wasn't easy to discover these albums in their album form. We had to
Yeah,
look at compilations.
yeah. We had a couple live albums that were like that too, like
Yes.
live the Who live at Leeds. Like that's certainly how I got into the Who. Led Zeppelin's BBC sessions was a
Yep.
massive impact on me because that came out when I was in high school. Like, so it's kind of cool too. Like even with live albums, like we can go back and discover some of these. And like for me, the live version of Paranoid is almost like the one I hear in my head. Like this is a song called Paranoid. Like like it
Yeah.
almost feels weird for me to hear Paranoid without Ozzy doing that intro to it.
Well, and even Eric Clapton Unplugged,
Oh
the
God, yeah.
reimagining of Eric Clapton. How many of us of our generation think of Unplugged as the gateway to Eric Clapton? Because I wasn't listening to Derek and the Dominoes.
My mind was blown when I found out, like, oh, he was in Cream and like he was like this
Yeah,
iconic guy. Like I didn't know. I just thought he was the Tears in Heaven guy.
the Tears in Heaven guy, and the one wedding song.
Layla.
I always forget the name of it, but with the guitar riff, "Wonderful Tonight." Wonderful
Yeah.
Tonight. I knew Wonderful Tonight, and then Unplugged came out, and I learned a whole lot more about Eric Clapton's career because he was all over every magazine. He was on TV shows. Everybody was talking about almost like an Eric Clapton retrospective because that Unplugged was so big and crossed so many generations of
Yeah.
people.
And he speaking of Columbus, he lives, I think he still lives in Columbus,
I think he does.
which is
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
Longtime Columbus resident, Eric
Yeah, yeah, that's
Clapton.
right. Yep.
Okay. Is there any?
I just think
Go
we
ahead.
should. The one final thing to wrap up the Ozzy segment. I just want to talk about like just how shocking his passing was today. We're recording this on Tuesday, the day that we learned of his passing, and like it's crazy because like he just had that benefit show, which was touted as his farewell show, which obviously it was, but like I don't think that any of us had any idea that this is what was happening. I think I saw it as a retirement thing, that he maybe physically couldn't do it anymore. How old was he, by the way?
76.
76. So, I think he was up clearly well past his prime. But, they did that benefit show. They got tons of bands to come and play. And it was this great celebration of Ozzy's career and Black Sabbath. And, they raised a ton of money for charity. And it was just this great thing. And it was just shocking that, like, 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks, whatever it is, he's gone. And I was just stunned when I saw that news today.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that he was in bad shape, but just a couple weeks off of that, back to the beginning benefit show, yeah, he had emphysema and Parkinson's, but he sang from a chair,
Yep.
and you just wouldn't have guessed from those videos that he was this close to
Yeah.
passing away. But life is a weird thing, and how many times have we experienced that where somebody passes away just a month after finally leaving a job, or there's just when people are done, they're kind of done.
There's a big,
And
yeah.
you got to feel like he went out on his own terms.
That's a big thing in, like, coaching, when these, like, long time college coaches retire, like Joe
Yeah,
Paterno, Bear Bryant, like, they coach forever, then they retire, and then very shortly after that they pass, and it's like, man, like, it was like that was the thing keeping them vital and alive and young.
that was the purpose.
Yeah. And I think that the hard thing is like, we don't know any details, and we shouldn't speculate, but I wonder if, like, they knew when he was doing this show how close he was, and that
Yeah.
maybe this was the end. And I kind of wonder if they did know, because you start putting pieces together, again, because of the show, we know of his children. His children are pseudo celebrities. Kelly got engaged at that show. And then you start putting two and two together. It's like, oh, did they know? And that's why he proposed at that show, a way of showing Ozzy that Kelly would be taken care of. I don't know. I shouldn't read into this stuff too much, but this is just what we do as music fans, I guess.
Yeah. And there's no need to hyperanalyze it, other than to say, like, it's another legendary closing chapter.
Yeah.
To play that final show and then pass away 2 weeks later, there's something kind of mystical and magical about it, and you just couldn't ask for a better storyline. We all got to go
Yeah.
sometime,
That's right.
and nobody knows exactly when, but it you couldn't script it much better.
Yeah, a buddy of mine today had messaged me and said, he thought that David Bowie was going to be tough to top. He put out that album right before he died, and it was,
Yeah.
it was a very dark album that, like, we didn't realize at the time, but it was being written pretty much as, a farewell album from Bowie. And he said, boy, that would be tough. That he always thought that was going to be tough, if not impossible to top. But Ozzy doing this farewell show a couple weeks before passing might top that. So
Yeah, it's Bowie, it's Warren Zevon recording his final record while he's dying. It's
yeah,
Johnny Cash recording that late stage record,
yeah,
right before his passing, where they were practically propping him up to finish that record. Not against his will, of course.
right,
He wanted to do it,
yeah,
but at the very last possible moment, and then, has that legacy. If he had to go, it's a cool way to go.
yeah. So well
So,
said. Rest in peace, Ozzy. Thank you for what you did for music, and yeah, his legacy will live for a very, very, very long time.
oh, for sure. And because of the moment that we live in, that music lives on. That music will be listened to and streamed and inspire more and more generations. Not every artist, not every style of music or band lives on forever, but Ozzy's one of those, Black Sabbath is one of those that will continue to be the building block for new musicians for generations to come.
Yep, well said.
People might forget Iron Butterfly, but they're not going to forget Black
Yeah,
Sabbath.
that's right. That's right.
All right. Well, there's no good segue, but You and I wanted to talk a little bit about Painted Shut, which is a record by the band Hopalong. They're from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Singer Francis Quinlan. Hopalong was kind of a solo project, an acoustic solo project, where you create a band name around an individual artist, and then they put an actual band together. Drummer was the brother, guitar player from, I can never pronounce the band name.
Oh, are we doing this
I'm
again?
gonna
Waxahachie.
No, please don't do that.
Bad Company.
It's Joe Reinhardt. I can pronounce that. And then he was in
Rammstein.
Algernon Cadwallader.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of them?
No, I'm not
They
pronouncing
were
that.
a Midwest emo band from 2005 to kind of 2010, and they recently did a reunion tour, but they were low key influential in that kind of indie emo
Yeah.
time period, second wave, third wave, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what wave we're on with emo.
Nah, I can't keep track.
But he played guitar, and we'll talk about the record, but this was just a magical group of musicians probably putting their very best work together. I'm not sure if they're an active band anymore or not. But it all kind of starts with Francis Quinlan. The vocals that are on that record, the easy comparison is Janis Joplin, because there's a kind of a guttural singing style that it goes from falsetto to kind of a screamy guttural to clean and beautiful. The vocal melodies that are on this record are just unbelievable.
So yeah, it was funny, like I don't have as strong of a connection or relationship to this album as you do, but I certainly like remembered it fondly when you said, "Hey, let's talk about this album." I was definitely up for it. But as I was re-listening to it, like I did find myself at first being like, "Oh yeah, that's right, man, I forgot how good this album is." And then a couple of the moments, just for me, her vocals just took me completely out of it. It's, I don't really want to jump to it too soon, but like you're like, as I'm listening along, the first 3-4 tracks are just phenomenal to me. And then you get to Happy to See Me. And I don't know how to describe the way she sings that song. Like she is going for notes that she can't hit. And
I couldn't disagree
I
more, but
am
that's fine.
hypocritical because I love Courtney Love, who does very similar things in a lot of Hole songs where she tries to hit notes that she can't quite hit. But yeah, I don't know. I think she is a phenomenal artist, and I think she's an excellent singer. And I think it's impressive the different styles that she can sing on one album. Like as you mentioned, the way she seamlessly can go from like a straight delivery to falsetto to screeching, like she can kind of go all over the place, and it is impressive. But when she like goes for those like high notes and like just like strains her voice to try to get there, for me, there's something off-putting about it. If I'm being honest, I hate being negative on this show, but it's just it really takes me out of the song. But I will say I've listened to this album like 5 times probably in preparation for this show, and yeah, I really enjoy it for the most part. There's just a couple moments that take it out, and it just kind of reminded me why this album maybe never stuck with me.
So I understand the criticism. I love that song. I heard that song played live probably 4 or 5 times, seeing them over the years. It's something that she did on her solo record too, with a song called "Went to L.A." So this is like it's one of her pitches. It's one of the things she does. And by the way, I'm just going to say this. I think I remember that she started using the pronoun they.
Okay.
And I don't know that for a fact, and I couldn't find any verification. But if we're using the wrong pronouns, I apologize.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I'm just gonna continue. We mean no harm, and we try and respect that
For
stuff
sure.
when it comes up. But I also the solo record likewise became one of my go-to records during the pandemic, and it's a stripped down version of Hopalong, or more like the Hopalong that was when it was a solo project. And the type of vocals you're talking about, that stark, I'm going for it, I do think she hits the notes, but she's hitting it in a guttural, kind of screamy way, and I love it. It gave me chills live every time I saw it live. But I do notice, when I would play this in the car with my family, because this is a very summer record,
Mhm.
summer vacation record, and I probably played it way too much that summer of 2015 in front of my family. And I did notice some of the looks my wife would give when she was going after those big notes, and it is a little bit grating, but you and I like grating music,
For
and
sure.
for me, that's one of the songs I would never skip it. I love that song. But let's talk about some of the songs, because I just think I got to bring up the playlist here. But so the record starts off with The Knock, and The Knock is one of these songs that is just absolutely infectious. It was a staple on all of my running playlists, specifically
Mm.
the one that was timed out for me to run 5Ks, because it's peppy. And then when it breaks into the jammy guitar part at the end, the riff, it's like one of those riffs that I wish to God I had written, and I
Yeah.
would just never stop playing it. And they play it over and over and over, and you can't get enough of it. You just want them to keep going and keep playing it.
It's my
And that's
it's
where the full band really plays itself together. It sounds like one of the most cohesive bands from that entire time period.
it's my favorite song on the album, and I don't even think it's close.
Yeah.
I don't even have anything to add. Like, I think you just hit on it exactly what that song does. To me, it's perfect. It's absolute perfection. That's how you open an album. Like, and that was like kind of what I was talking about, that journey that like I went through, hearing that song for the first time in a few years, and just being instantly reminded, like, oh yeah, like, God, this was great. Like, why did I stop listening to this album so much? Like, The Knock is just an incredible song, a great way to open an album.
And also, to your point, as much as I love the entire record, I think the streaming numbers kind of tell the tale. The album starts super strong. The first half, the first four songs, The Knock, Buddy in the Parade, Horseshoe Crabs is probably my favorite song on this
I
record.
love that one too. Yeah.
It's just so good. And then Waitress is amazing. And then Happy to See Me is maybe it's the second lowest number of streams on the record. And so, to your point, it is a controversial song
Yeah.
or whatever. Things fall off, but then finishing with Well Dressed and Sister
Yeah.
Cities.
Yeah.
It's just, if they finished the record with Well Dressed, you'd be like, this is a perfect record. But then they followed up with Sister Cities, which became one of their set closers on their tour.
Hmm.
And just the sing-alongs, and because when they play Well Dressed, I'm not going to do it for you, but there's like a falsetto thing that
Hmm.
she does when the song changes, and the
Hmm.
entire crowd starts trying their best to do it
Hmm.
along with them. So much of my love of this band is the record, but then also seeing them live 3 or 4 times during this album cycle was just an unbelievable thing. And I accidentally discovered Hopalong. I went to a show at the Grog Shop because one of the openers was Appleseed Cast, and I wanted to see Appleseed Cast.
Yeah.
And Hopalong was the first opener
Hmm.
before Painted Shut was even out, and I was kind of mediocre on the band, but then they played Tibetan Pop Stars from their first record as the set closer,
Hmm.
and that was when I heard that song, that was when I realized this band was something more. But it's one of those songs that if you listen to the recorded version on Spotify, you'll probably say, "Oh, that's okay." But they found themselves somewhere between writing that album, releasing that album, and then touring it, because the live version of that song is more of the Francis you get on Painted Shut. And so they found themselves, and after hearing Painted Shut, you realize that Painted Shut is the culmination
Yeah.
of them finding themselves on that first record.
I mean, that makes sense. Like, listening to this album, it struck me very much as having a very live feel and sound to it, but like not, and I don't mean that in any kind of negative way. I think I mean that in only the most positive way. That it Because we talk a lot about different bands, and We used to talk about this with Foxing, where we felt like maybe their studio albums didn't match the intensity that we felt when we would see them live. This album, I've never seen them live, but I would imagine doesn't have that problem. Like, to me, Painted Shut brings the intensity for sure. And it was funny, like, even to your point about Well Dressed in Sister Cities, like, I was listening to it today, and got through to those last two songs, and then knowing that if I started it again, I'd get to go right back to the knock. That flow is perfect, like going right from those songs back into the knock, and then you get those strong first four tracks. For me, that's like kind of the draw. And so yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about Hop Along. I just never went really down the rabbit hole with them. This is an album that, like, it was really fun for me to revisit and listen to some things I hadn't listened to in a long time. But, I unfortunately can't add as much to the conversation this time because it's just not a band I've ever gone down that path with.
Yeah. It was also the part of the live show too was just the whole vibe, and watching Francis pull off what I think was a glass of whiskey between songs, probably to get that feeling in her throat,
Yeah.
to hit those guttural notes, and the degree of difficulty of playing these songs live night in and night out and pulling off those vocals, to see her not do that and not take any notes off and really go after all of those things, was because there's nothing I hate more than a band that goes after it on the record and then backs off 30% on their live show.
Yeah.
And a live band really going after it is everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
They played a free show outside the Rock Hall for some reason. I'm not sure why they were selected for the summer series, and it was outside and the weather was perfect and the sunset during their set. It was kind of a makeshift stage out there in the plaza in front of the Rock Hall.
Yeah.
And just, I took my wife, she knew the record because I played it, but she's not as big a music fan as I am, and she wasn't really looking forward to it. But by the end of it, even she was saying, well, that was really something. I really saw
Mm-hmm.
something tonight.
Yeah.
And we all have those friends or family members that are kind of marginal with the music compared to the rest of us. Probably most of you listening to this, if you're listening to this, you're one of us. But when a band performs to that level and brings people up, like this happened most recently with my buddy I went to see Pearl Jam with in Boston, and that was when Manchester Orchestra was playing the House of Blues the night before. And I'd gotten him to listen to some of the Spotify stuff, and he listened to Manchester Orchestra a little bit, and then he saw them play that show where they were playing Cope from front to back live, and then some of their best songs in the encore. And he was a total convert after seeing them live, because hearing it and then seeing them do it is like, it's just another thing. And Hop Along had that. Watching the Joe Reinhardt is a super tall guitar player, and he's just the confidence oozes off him as he looking around and playing off the other band members and doing his thing. It was the same thing with Manchester Orchestra, seeing Andy Prince jump around and seeing Andy Hull work off the rest of the band members. That's the same kind of intensity and cohesion and chemistry that you saw on the stage with Hop Along.
I was going to make the joke that, man, your buddy felt that, and that's even their worst album. But I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. At least
I think you might be wrong, but that's fine.
I'm curious what you think is their worst album.
I would say that Simple Math might be worse, but I love Simple Math as well. But I think Simple Math is more hit or miss. The Cope, I would have agreed with you at.
Yeah, sorry.
I would have agreed with you at a certain point, but when they celebrated the re-release of Cope and they started doing it live from front to back, and I had the context of where they went to afterwards, it made me rethink the way I felt about Cope. And then I listened to Hope, where they re-recorded a bunch of the Cope songs in a quieter, more acoustic type way. It just made me appreciate that record a lot more in ways that I actually rethink Simple Math, and some of the low moments on Simple Math is more of they don't really know which way they're going.
I was such a dick to that band at that time. Like, I remember when Hope came out, like playing it and be like doing the stupid Hope, more like Nope joke, but it's just funny because like I've really gone on a journey with Manchester Orchestra. You know, Million Masks was the album that like really brought me back, and I was super excited about it.
Yeah.
But to your point about seeing about that band, like you and I went and saw them here in Columbus, and seeing them play some of those. What was the album right before? God, why am I drawing a blank on the album title? The one before Million
Miles to
Masks,
the Surface,
Miles to
something.
Black Black
A Black Mile to
Black
the
the Mile to the
Surface.
Surface.
I can't
uh,
believe I can't
uh,
remember.
like that was an album that I definitely remember when it came out, feeling like, oh, maybe these guys are back like on the right direction after, because I did not like Cope. I just didn't like that album,
And that's fair.
and that and so you know, Black Mile kind of like started bringing me back. Million Masks got me, but like going and seeing them live and seeing them do those Black Mile songs and seeing the crowd reaction to it was mind blowing to me. Like it's like this weird thing happened. Like all these people discovered Manchester Orchestra while I was being an asshole about them, and like instead of giving them like a fair shot, you know. And now I've since gone back. I love that album now, Black Mile. Like that's one of my favorite Manchester Orchestra albums. Still love like I'm like all the way back in their boat now, which is just kind of funny, the power that a band who brings it live can just really do that and make you like really reevaluate things that maybe you had previously written them off for. And so maybe
Yeah, and
I just need to see Hop Along. That's
I think that's probably
maybe
part of it.
that's the issue, is I've never seen them live, and maybe that's why this doesn't resonate with me in quite the same way.
And on top of that, that was the night that we saw Foxing live.
Yeah.
And that was my second or third time seeing Foxing live, because the first time I ever heard Foxing in my entire life was on the 10th anniversary tour of Mean Everything to Nothing for Manchester Orchestra, and Foxing opened that show with
Okay.
Grand Paradise.
Yeah.
And once I heard Grand Paradise live,
it's life-changing.
It was over.
It's life-changing.
It's life-changing. But if you just if you take a buddy who's never heard of Foxing and you said, I want you to listen to Grand Paradise on Spotify, they're not going to get it the way that we got it, seeing them open a show with Grand Paradise and just blowing our faces off.
Yeah. So my first time seeing Foxing, I don't remember who they opened for. Or did they have somebody opening for them? I can't. They didn't play with Trail of Dead, did they? Did they ever open for Trail?
No idea.
I don't remember. But it was at the Basement in Columbus, this like tiny little club, and like I didn't know anything about them really. I think I knew of them from you by that point, maybe. Like I feel like I remember being kind of familiar with it. I know you were, because I'm pretty sure you were who introduced me to Foxing. But anyways, yeah, Grand Paradise, just like I said, like an absolute life-changing moment. And then I went back and listened to the album and was like this is really good, but like I was chasing the dragon, you know. I wanted that feel of the dynamics of that live version. But yeah, then getting to see him open for Manchester Orchestra again was a pretty awesome moment for sure. And then I missed out on the self-titled tour, and I'm still very, very, very bitter about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll never
get over it, because like I won't. There's a lot of those songs I'll never get to hear live because they'll go on, make more albums, play other songs live, you know, and it's like, man.
Maybe there'll be a second wave of that tour, and we might actually get one more chance. That'd be great.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of speculation about whether or not Hop Along still exists as a band, but I really, truly, I hope they do, and I hope you get a chance to see them live. They followed up this with Bark Your Head Off Dog or something of that nature, and it's a good record, but it definitely doesn't have, it's more complex. It doesn't have the same magic or heavy hitting nature. It's more subtle than Painted Shut.
Yeah.
But seeing them live, it would be a gift for you. It would be a gift.
So cool.
I think that's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah. Another one.
Yeah. As always, you can find everything we do at albumofrecord.com. Give us your email address. We ask nothing in return. Appreciate all the people who've subscribed on Spotify, on YouTube, all the different places. And, you know, you keep listening. We'll keep making these episodes. So until next time, it's been the Album of Record podcast.